area where they will check in with the receptionist. And there's if physicians wish to use the restroom, we have one that's only staff use, so they don't have to use that one right there. Everything is key coded so that they give a buzzer to buzz people in. These are meeting rooms. Then we're down into the clinical offices for the Tri-County staff, and the physician's office is right here. Including consultation area and telephone and the exam room. And if you want them to see what's in the exam room and how it's equipped, please be my guest. There's in this area.
Mm-hmm. So the early start referrals, how do they come in for early start referral?
The early start service coordinators walk them down and literally drop them off here. We call this the fast track table, which means please review the paper alone. There's no need, as far as they can tell, for actually any kind of contact between the service coordinator and a physician or a psychologist about interpreting results. If there's a question that they feel they'd like to have a consult, that might be something they would do, and they would tell you. Or, for example, a physician who reviews it might say, you know what, I need a consult with the service coordinator. There's some additional information that only the service coordinator would know, or it's not in the chart. I need to know if these records have been sent for, or can communicate for me. And so a physician can ask for that consult if need be. Okay.
And so the coordinator's name is on the front sheet here?
Right. It might be written on the chart. On this is what our statement of eligibility for the early start. In this case, this person has put the statement of eligibility, which we also shorthand call an SOE. There's the developmental assessments with the child's name, age, who's done it, what language they speak, unique client identifier. There may be additional information, for example, vision screening. We ask a physician to review this and to sign off on it that it's been reviewed by a physician. There will be a hearing questionnaire, and again, we'd like this to be signed off by a physician, or, that they've reviewed it. And inside the chart would be, for example, this case, this is an individualized family service plan. It's blank because the child has not yet been found eligible for early start. So it's also known as an IFSP. This would be, any kind of legal information, correspondence, if there's been any letters to the family. In this case, it's a Spanish-speaking family. That's this child saying that they've been darted, or there's been a dual area representation with the school district. Once the child would be, there's early start interview information here, all handwritten. It's not done by a typed computer. There might be additional information. In this case, this is we'll find another chart for you to review just to look at some more. This is the original inquiry from the family, which would be a telephone inquiry, and someone just wrote down the data for follow-up. In this case, there are some medical records, but this is not very much for a high-risk infant or a child who's been coming out of the NICU. I'd be expecting a lot of paper to review. In this case, we don't have it. Again, this thing here is for any kind of services that we're paying for. This is where it's listed, and this is like any other information such as referrals. Taking a look at this chart, let's see if this has got any additional, because this has different developmental assessments. So this one's in color. That's pretty. Let's see if there's any more information. No more medical information on this one.
Okay.
But this one has, for example, an IFSP that's already been filled out. So this child has actually been found eligible for early start services, and things have started. So they've, this child was brought in with developmental delay in motor, communication, and cognitive domains based upon review of the developmental assessment. And so there's a slight difference, although again, there's not a lot of medical information in this chart. So again, we can assume that there weren't a lot of, no high-risk conditions, not in an extensive time in a NICU, or unusual labor and delivery issues.
All right. Now?
Okay, hi, I'm Rene Kopes, Clinical Department Secretary for Tri-Counties Regional Center. I've been here many, many years. I work with Dr. Graff, Dr. Brand, Dr. Feldman, Dr. Nopar, and Mr. Lalo Perez. I coordinate appointments, vendors. As you can see, my office is a mess, but that's because I've got a lot of things to do. Call me if you need any help with anything. If I can't help you, I'll try to forward you on to whoever can. But being here for so many years, I kind of have a little thumb in everything, and I kind of know what's going on. So if I can be of help, that'd be great. I can help you.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's go back.
Well, charts, so after a physician has reviewed a chart, and if it's something where they sign, you know.
So they
sign
need to
up,
initial things.
How much? I'm signing, if they feel a person is eligible for services, which is, they would sign it. They may have there's almost always a treatment recommendation. For example, let's say that you feel that the child seems to have a developmental delay in communication, their receptive language, it's reasonable, appropriate to say hearing, referral to hearing conservation or hearing testing, or perhaps you might see some possible genetic issues, so you might say recommending chromosome analysis or some kind of whatever medical test or treatment, speech, OT, PT eval, PT treatment, things like that. That would be written here, and again, it's pure handwriting. If after reviewing a chart, you feel the person actually does not meet criteria for eligibility, again, you would sign off down here, but you would put the reason why. For example, there are certain legal considerations, such as a 33% delay. Let's say a child is 15% delayed in speech, and that's their worst area. That child would not be eligible. You'd be putting down does not meet criteria, but it's useful to say because they're only delayed 15% as opposed to 33%. So that way people there's no guessing. You'd write it there, and you don't have to write anything down here.
And we would make a recommendation for early Head Start instead.
Exactly. I mean, just because a child doesn't meet our eligibility criteria doesn't mean they don't have needs or follow-up. You might say, their child seems to be within normal limits, but you know what? I still think this kid needs to have a hearing eval. Or you know what? Let's refer them. The public health nurse should be involved. Perhaps there seems to be some questions about nutrition in the family. They're very low income, and so I'm questioning whether or not, based on something in here, whether or not they're getting adequate support. Or I'd like some follow-up. Or it can be anything. Again, the recommendations here are not necessarily because they're eligible. They're just plain recommendations. It can also be not eligible with recommendations. As a matter of fact, I think that quite often that's one of the most important things we can do is by helping refer people to the correct resource or to additional resources, such as public health, such as WIC, such as to CHDP, things like that, if they still exist.
And my experience has been with the medical therapy units, if we just pay attention to the people who are professionals, the OTs and the PTs, and look at their recommendations, it really guides us. Is that the same case here?
Absolutely. For example, let's say that if someone has seems to be they're 18 months and they're not walking yet, has there been a physical therapy evaluation? Seems to be very important. It's not just a physician review, but who's going to be doing the treatment. There's sensory issues, referral to an OT to get a more in-depth evaluation. Just someone has speech delay in a developmental assessment, for example, may say that the child has this one says consider a speech and language evaluation because the developmental assessment has identified a delay in communication. But this is not, okay, the communication say that they're 16 months for expressive language, and this child is chronologically 26 months, 26.24. And that's important, but this is also not a speech and language pathology evaluation. This is not a specialist. So you say the next thing is get a specialist to really go in and measure and do a much broader, more broader, but also more in-depth eval. It could be for PT, could be for OT, could be for psychological evaluation, could be for more medical follow-up. Say that you're seeing some stuff which I think the pediatric neurologist should be consulted, or a hematologist, whatever. I mean, those things are very important because this may be actually the first point of contact, might be the only point of contact for some of these families.